Don't forget, we're live already. Hi, Stephanie. Just doing a sound check.
Hello.
It works. It works. Sound check, Miss Fox. Testing 1, 2.
Hello.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Great.
Just a reminder, we are live and streaming.
Does that mean we're ready to begin, Mr. Markarian?
I think we need a few more minutes to collect a couple more souls.
All right, I can't see everybody.
Almost everybody's here. I'll let you know.
There we go.
Might be my fault. Oh, there it is. Got it. Okay. Everyone's here, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Markarian. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Education meeting. The board has already met in executive session and saluted the flag at that time. So with that, I think, Mr. McLaughlin, could we please have a roll call?
Mr. Salmon,
Here.
Ms. Schaefer,
Here.
Ms. Beckman,
Here.
Mrs. White,
Here.
Mrs. McKeon, Mrs. McKeon. I think she might be frozen.
Here. Here. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yes, thank you. Mrs. Richmond,
Here.
Mrs. Korn,
Here.
Ms. Hira,
Here.
Mr. Markarian,
Here.
Mr. Syatt,
Here.
Ms. Fox,
Here.
Mrs. Gray.
Here.
Madam President, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. And once again, welcome everyone. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Education of Bernards Township. Notice of the time and the place of this meeting was provided, and copies of that resolution were forwarded to the official newspapers as designated by the Board of Education and to the township clerk, and a copy of the notice was posted on the bulletin board of the Board of Education offices in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act. Due to the public health emergency in the state of New Jersey, as declared in Executive Order 103, the board will be suspending its normal meeting procedures this evening and conducting a virtual meeting. Directions for accessing the virtual public meeting were posted on the district website, www.bernardsboe.com. These same directions were posted at our intended but unavailable meeting location. We very much welcome input from the public. Because this is a virtual meeting, public comment will be handled in one of three ways. Public comment method number one, which is the preferred method, is the full video via Zoom. When you're ready to make a public comment, join the Board of Education meeting via the Zoom link posted on the district webpage, www.bernardsboe.com. Please plan for your participation in the meeting by turning your camera and microphone on, dressing appropriately, maintaining a proper background setting for your camera's view, having a quiet space, muting the YouTube live stream of the Board of Education meeting when you are speaking so that there is no feedback with your participation in the Zoom meeting. You'll be placed in a queue and admitted to the meeting when it is your turn to make a public comment. Once you see that you are admitted to the Zoom call, it will be your turn to make your public comment. Please begin your public comment by stating your full name and address. After making your public comment, please exit the Zoom meeting so that the next person in the waiting room may be admitted to make their public comment. Public comment method number two is the dial-in via Zoom. When you are ready to make your public comment, join the Zoom meeting using the dial-in phone number and meeting ID posted on the district website. Plan for your participation in the meeting by having a quiet space and muting the YouTube live stream of the Board of Education meeting when you are speaking so that there is no feedback with your participation in the Zoom meeting. You'll be placed in a queue and admitted to the meeting when it is your turn to make a public comment. Once you see that you are admitted to the Zoom call, it will be your turn to make your public comment. Please begin your comment by stating your full name and address. After making your public comment, please exit the Zoom meeting so that the next person waiting may make their public comment. Public comment method three, if the preferred full video method of public comment is not an option for you and the dial-in method fails, please follow these directions to submit your public comment. Starting at 7 p.m., email your comment to btconnect@bernardsboe.com or text your comment to 908-292-3047. Use public comment as the email subject or start of the message. Indicate your first and last name and address. This is required for your public comment to be included. Regardless of whether you use method 1, 2, or 3, please note that public comments are limited to a maximum of approximately 3 minutes if read aloud. Individuals are permitted a maximum of 1 public comment during public comment on agenda items and 1 public comment during the public comment on non-agenda items sections of the agenda. Public comments submitted via method 1 and 2 will be processed first, then comments submitted by method 3. An individual's comments made using method 1 or 2 will not also be read into the record through method 3. The Board of Education reserves the right to limit the length of time allotted for public comment. As we've been doing over these many months, we're going to limit that to 45 minutes in the agenda items section and another 45 minutes if necessary in the non-agenda section. No public comments will be accepted before 7 p.m. or after item 19. Board forum of the agenda begins. Please understand that public comment portions of our agendas are not structured as question and answer sessions, but rather they are offered as opportunities to share your thoughts with the Board of Education. The board may or may not respond to public comments. Any board responses to public comments will generally be addressed during board forum or during committee reports. However, all comments are considered and will be investigated and addressed as appropriate. Please be courteous and mindful of the rights of others when providing comments. Comments may not be abusive, obscene, threatening, or irrelevant. Please understand that students and employees have specific legal and privacy protections. The board is not permitted to respond in public to comments about students and employees. Please also understand that the board will not be responsible for the content of comments made by members of the public. Members of the public are cautioned that they are commenting at their own risk, and any personally directed statements they make may be subject to legal liability to the affected individual. If it is necessary for the board to go into executive session at the end of the meeting, we will provide an estimated length of time for this session and whether any action is anticipated to be taken upon returning to the public session. And with that very long introduction, we are up to the student representative report. Juliet?
Hi, hello. So as the weather begins to warm up and things are starting to return back to normalcy, I think school's been going really well. These past few weeks, there's been really great success for the Ridge Forensics team. In particular, Ridge won the UPenn tournament and numerous students have qualified for national tournaments like the Tournament of Champions and the NCFL tournament. Like other school organizations, some members have asked about the possibility of clubs meeting in person and if that could happen going forward. Additionally, there was some concern about the drop-off situation where kids at Ridge complained about being unable to reach their first class in time because they could only enter the building from 7:15 to 7:35. One thing I definitely know that the seniors are really looking forward to is that senior prom is beginning to be planned, which is very exciting. It's nice to know that there's still some key events to look forward to like any other year. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Juliet? We appreciate you joining us, Juliet. You're most welcome to stay with us, or if you've got things you need to do, we understand as well. Our next item is the board presentation. We have our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction and our Director of School Counseling here to take us through the post-secondary report for the class of 2020. Ms. Fox and Ms. Smith, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gray. Mr. Syatt is going to do the honors of sharing his screen for us tonight, and we will get started without delay. So good evening, everyone. As Ms. Gray said, I'm Kristen Fox, the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction, and I'm pleased to be here tonight with Ms. Stephanie Smith, the Director of School Counseling, to present to you the annual post-secondary report. We will be sharing a significant amount of information with you tonight and providing you with our analysis and highlights. Please know that we will post the full presentation tomorrow morning so that you can review it in greater depth. You may want to write down your questions so we can answer them at the end of the presentation. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Smith to get us started.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. So tonight we've organized the presentation into 4 main sections. You'll see on the screen here that we'll start off with standardized admissions testing, specifically the impact that COVID has had on the ACT, SAT, and AP testing as well. We'll then discuss college admissions data for the class of 2020, as well as career readiness as it pertains to post-secondary preparation. And then we'll end this evening with a preview of the AP exam schedule for this spring 2021. So our first section, as I mentioned, is standardized testing for the SAT, ACT, and the SAT subject tests. And before we get into detail about the actual data for the class of 2020, it's important to keep in mind the context that the pandemic has and the impact that COVID-19 has had specifically on the SAT, ACT, and even our AP testing as well. But the pandemic, needless to say, has had significant impacts on standardized admissions testing across the country, whether it be test cancellations, limited access for students, difficulty in registration online, and actually having canceled test dates as well. So we did have a number of students last March 2020, mostly juniors, who were still able to test, but of course, many were impacted by the cancellations last spring. We continue to see the fallout of the pandemic as it relates to SAT and ACT, and this is something that as a school district, we continue to monitor to keep abreast of any of the changes that are currently unfolding, as well as anything that might be on the horizon. An example of that is that the College Board announced just this past January in 2021 that they are not continuing the SAT essay, which was previously optional, after the June 2021 test administration. On the screen here, I've also included several links to test optional policies. So this was a widely popular shift as a result of the pandemic, seen at colleges and universities across the country, adopting a more test-friendly, test-flexible, test-optional. There were several terms that were used, but needless to say, hundreds of schools adopted this type of a policy for this class. And so we'll continue to see the impact of that over the next several years. When we talk specifically about SAT and ACT, there are one or two key differences between the tests. And so I've just highlighted some material related to the test content, timing, whether or not there's a penalty, and the actual scoring procedures. But generally speaking, students tend to do better on one or the other, and different colleges have different preferences. Next, we'll take a look at our testing trends. So for our testing trends, you can see the graduation cohorts over the past several years. So specifically, this presentation relates to the class of 2020. And so you can see the comparison between the number of students in the class of 2020 who took an SAT test and those who took an ACT test. And so similarly to the class of 2019, the SAT wins over the ACT for participation. This does mirror the national trend. And then you can see on the screen here that it also mirrors and reflects the trend within the state of New Jersey. For the SAT, the mean scores for Ridge for the state of New Jersey and the national mean scores for the graduation class of 2020 are on the slide here. So you'll be able to see that Ridge scores well above the state and national mean scores, which is consistent with prior years. Next, we'll take a look at our comparison districts. So our peers and colleagues in districts nearby, this list is in alphabetical order by the title of the school district, and highlighted in darker green is where Ridge places on that spectrum. So you can see here, if you take a look at the numbers, that we fall in 4th place for reading and 4th in math. And you can see the distribution of scores from our peer schools. How this data is collected is through the school profile. So the school profile is published each year for the class that is applying to schools. And so some districts do not have their profile information either updated for the class of 2020 or published publicly online. But those that do, we've included in this chart. So moving on to our ACT scores. This is a lot of information again, but as Ms. Fox said, that we'll post this presentation so you can take a deeper look, but we're trying to just highlight for you some key trends and some of our overall analysis that we have. So looking at the ACT, we just took a look at the SAT mean scores. And so for each of the sections of the ACT, you can see the Ridge mean score as compared to the New Jersey State mean score. There is an increase in every category this year and higher numbers in every category than the state average as well. The average composite score is up by 0.4, and we are higher than the state average by 3 whole points. When we discuss ACT, it's important to keep in mind a metric that they use, which is the benchmark. And so the benchmark is the minimum score needed that indicates to you your likelihood of earning a certain grade in the corresponding college course. And so if you were to earn a benchmark score in any of the test sections, you have a 50% chance of earning a B in the corresponding course or a 75% chance of earning a C. So I'm showing you these benchmarks because we'll take a look in a moment at the next slide of where our class of 2020 falls. The class of 2020 is compared to the classes before in meeting that college readiness benchmark that the ACT has established for in all 4 testing areas. Overall, these benchmarks are higher than last year, and Ridge is higher in all testing areas than the state percentage. Next, just like we did for our neighborhood districts, we explored the scores of our peer institutions here. And so you can see compared to others, again, some of this information is not published on school profiles, but those we have alphabetized this list and highlighted a few where Ridge falls. You can see that we are very similar to a lot of our colleagues, and we are tied for 4th place on the list, but still well above the national average, which is 20.8. And speaking of those national averages, the national SAT and ACT score comparison is on this slide here. And so the average composite score and the approximate equivalent. So how that's determined is through the concordance table. So the College Board produces the concordance table. I've linked it here if you want to take a look at that. But the last report was published in 2018, and it essentially refers to a relationship that they have established between these scores. And the measures are not based on identical constructs because the tests themselves are very different, but it does provide a type of imperfect prediction on how a student would perform on either test. And that's linked in the presentation there. Next, we'll discuss the SAT subject tests, which I will turn over to Ms. Fox.
Sorry, I had to unmute. Thank you. So I'm going to share the class of 2020's SAT Subject 2 scores, but first I'd like to share some additional changes announced by the College Board this past January. They announced on January 11th that they would be eliminating entirely the SAT 2 subject area tests, in addition to the essay test as mentioned by Ms. Smith earlier. Their statement included here says that it was done to adapt to the changes in the college admissions process and help to reduce demands on students. I've included a link on this slide to an article that goes into more depth on this decision. But for the current school year, these tests were only made available to students through the December 2020 administration. As Ms. Smith mentioned, last year's school closure impacted our students' ability to take these assessments. So when looking at the scores, we do need to keep this in mind, although you'll see that the scores are mostly consistent with previous years. We typically have a small number of students who take each of these tests. Note the larger numbers, though, of test takers in ecological biology and math 2. Students can take these tests in any grade, so depending upon when they choose to take it, they may be more or less prepared depending on how it aligns with when they took the comparable course. For example, if they take U.S. history in their senior year, it would be 2 years after they took the course as a sophomore, unless of course they're in AP U.S. history. So it varies quite a bit. For these scores you see for ELA and social studies, they dipped slightly from last year. But remember, we are looking at small population of students, 23 in ELA and 21 in US history. And this certainly may have been impacted by the school closure. In Math 1 and 2, there was a small 4-point dip on Math 1 and a 10-point increase in Math 2. Math 1 was taken by 15 students, while Math 2 was taken by 78 students. In science, there was an increase in each test score except for ecological biology. The increase in the chemistry score was significant at 50 points. Ms. Smith?
All of the Ridge students have access to Method Test Prep 2.0. So Method Test Prep is a program that the district provides for students free access through their Naviance account. And so students can practice with an SAT or an ACT test and receive feedback on their performance. So the usage rates are very similar to years past. And so the statistics are on the screen there, but several students logging in, number of logins, and over 40 hours of time on task, which again is similar usage to last year. But this is one of the ways that we support our students with having free test prep. I know that the PTO at Ridge and the class sponsors also coordinate practice tests and test events as well.
So next I'll speak about our students' participation and achievement in the AP exams. In the spring of 2020, the College Board had to respond quickly to the ever-changing crisis we found ourselves in, not really knowing how long we'd be out for quite some time after it began. This left the College Board little time to adjust their testing plans. However, within 2 months, the tests were completely redesigned to accommodate the virtual environment. The biggest change was the elimination of content that most schools would not have completed by mid-March. This means that entire units were eliminated in many courses. While this would certainly be helpful to most, some teachers or schools may also have changed their course sequence before the year started. Other changes included the elimination of the multiple choice and long essay type questions. The tests were 45 minutes in length, and they were all taken online at home. They were completely open note, and the College Board provided free lessons that were live streamed over YouTube prior to testing. They also offered students full refunds if they did not want to go ahead and take the test. While there were reportedly significant technological issues with testing worldwide, the problems were of a somewhat limited scope for Ridge students. Next. Oh, sorry. The annual analysis of scores does need to take this situation into account, at least in part, and will need to be considered really for the next few years as the College Board transitions back to more traditional in-person testing. So the AP courses that are offered are the equivalent of an introductory college level course. We offer 25 of the 38 that are available. Scores range from 1 through 5, with the 3 considered to be a passing score. Note, however, that the passing score to earn college credit does vary by institution and major. You will see that most of our students who take the course also take the exam, despite the fact that we do not require it in order to earn AP credit on the transcript. The great news is that 94% of all of the exams taken in the spring of 2020 earned passing scores. So I'll report next on student participation and achievement on the next several slides. There were some changes in enrollment, and I am noting those which saw an increase of more or less than 20 students in a course, in an AP course. In most cases, these declines represent one-year changes. Last year, for example, psychology enrollment was down, but has come back this year. The same is true for calculus AB. Macroeconomics and microeconomics were down in 2020, but are back up again this year to 123 students. Nothing that I see here represents a trend at this point. One of the other reported statistics is the percentage of students in the course who also took the exam. Some districts require students to take the exam in order to earn AP credit, but we do not. So our very high participation rates are not because it's required. I make a note of participation rates here when they are more or less than 80%. But note that the courses in bold actually had greater than 90% participation. Given the circumstances, that's quite impressive. Next. Over 5 years, you can see that our participation rate has always been high, and last year, in 2020, dipped by only 0.3%, still being higher than the previous 3 years. These next 2 slides include the data supporting my analysis for you to examine later. The next several slides review student achievement on the AP exams. The AP Equity Score is designed to measure student access to exams and to assess both the equity and excellence of our school's AP program. 61.1% of Ridge's entire senior class who scored a 3 or higher on an AP exam at any point in high school is shown on the right. Additionally, in the middle, you see that the percentage of Ridge's entire 10th, 11th, and 12th grade classes took and scored a 3 or higher on at least one exam in the spring of 2020. In this calculation, students who scored a 3 or higher on an AP exam are counted only once, regardless of how many AP exams they took and were successful in. There's therefore no way to inflate this percentage by restricting access to AP. Students who earn 1s or 2s on AP exams neither increase nor reduce this percentage. In addition, by showing the proportion of the overall population, not just the AP classroom, we are better able to determine the extent to which our overall population is receiving access to advanced academics in high school. When looking at information about passing scores, the college provides us with multiple ways to understand how our students are doing. On this slide, so here we look at the total number of exams taken and the percentage of the exams that earned a passing score. We had a total of 1,657 exams taken in 2020, and 94% of the exams earned a passing score. While in 2019, 96% of all of the 1,579 exams taken earned a passing score. So that represents a 2% dip overall in the number of student exams earning a passing score. There were, you notice, a fewer total number of exams in 2019, 78 fewer to be exact. And so what you see in the next slide, Mr. Syed, it might be the next. So I'm sorry, can you go back one? What you see here is a breakdown of the 5s, 4s, and 3s that were earned on exams over the past 5 years. So while you do see a smaller number of 5s in 2020, 767, than there were in 2019, you also see a greater number of 4s and 3s in 2020. What this also tells us, because there were a greater number of students taking the exam, is that we saw an increase in the number of 1s and 2s. I would suggest that this might be explained to the changes in the exam and the virtual environment. Sorry, now you can go to the one back. I'm sorry. I think I had them out of order. We also look at the percentage of unique students on this slide who earn at least 1 3 on one exam, which means that 96% of students taking the exam earned at least 1 passing score. This number is within 1% over the last 5 years. In ELA, we offer 3 exams. English Lang is taken by juniors, English Lit and Composition is taken by seniors, and Seminar is taken by seniors as well. The top graph is the total number of test takers, and the bottom graph is the percentage of test takers with a passing score. You can see that the total number of English Language and Composition test takers has increased each year, while the number of Lit students has fluctuated. Seminar was a new course in 2019, and that number went down in 2020, but is back up in 2021 with 24 students enrolled. The percentage of students passing on the bottom chart has remained fairly consistent, with a dip last year in Lit that can likely be compared to the dip in test takers as well as the learning environment, given that that course is composed of all seniors. The breakdown of passing scores, this shows 3s, 4s, and 5s on each of those exams, are shown here. Note that Seminar was introduced just 2 years ago. So this year, 2021, will only be the 3rd year we are administering the exam. In mathematics, we offer exams in Calculus AB, Calculus BC, Statistics, and Computer Science. You see that the total number of test takers increased from 2019 to 2020 significantly, the green being 2020, in every course. And the percentage of passing scores for each exam is at 100% for each course except Computer Science. But note that with Computer Science, those scores have increased over the last few years. This is the breakdown of passing scores, representing the 5s, the 4s, and the 3s in each of those courses. The first one would be Calculus AB, and the second column would be Calculus BC. In science, we offer AP exams in 7 subjects: biology, chemistry, environmental science, physics 1, physics 2, physics C, mechanics, and physics C, electricity and magnetism. The number of total test takers fluctuates over the years, as you can see by the bar graphs on the top graph. You see that there were increases in bio, physics 1, and environmental science, but decreases in the other courses. Physics 1, the number there of 123 does include some students who were not enrolled in the course but took the exam on their own. The percentage of test takers across all subjects is very high, is also very high, between 95 and 100%, with only environmental science seeing fluctuation over the years. That course, like English literature, consists of mostly seniors as well. Certainly may have been an impact last year. Here's the breakdown of passing scores in the science courses, showing you the 5s, the 4s, and the 3s. The enrollments were much lower in the Physics C courses, but nearly all of the students in both C courses earned 5s. In social studies, we offer 7 exams: European history, US government and politics, human geography, macroeconomics, microeconomics, psychology, and US history. The enrollments were up in every course except human geography. I'm sorry, the enrollments were not up across the board, but they were up in most of our courses. One of the things I wanted to make a note of is that the shift we see in government and politics, where you note that that course is up to 188 test takers from 169 the year prior. And then in macro and microeconomics, we did see a decline in the number of test takers. What happened over the last couple of years is that we redesigned the course, and what used to be all combined into one course, both economics courses and the government and politics exam, has now been divided into 2 courses. So we think some of those fluctuations might be explained by the changes in those 3 exams and now 2 courses. Note that the scores, the percentage of test takers passing the exams, is quite high, where they are nearly 100% in all courses. You'll note that the scores in government and politics did decline by 5% from last year, which again, like I said, might be explained, as well as in micro and macro, where they also saw a little bit of a dip, might be explained by the change in the course sequencing. Noteworthy is that while psychology had a dip last year, they have recovered this year. It's really noteworthy, I believe, that the percentage of passing scores in European history increased from 88% to 100% despite the pandemic. Here's the breakdown of passing scores for social studies exams. In most courses, the number and percentage of 5s is higher than 4s and 3s. In world languages, we offer courses in French, Spanish, Italian, and Latin. Students have also taken the Chinese exam the past few years, while the Japanese exam has not been taken since 2016. The number of test takers increased in all of our courses. And just make a note of the fact that we offer the Latin exam on alternating years. So that information is only showing you for 2020, 2018, and 2016. The passing scores are all at 100% for every subject except Italian, which did see a dip to 91%. But note that that exam was taken by only 21 students. This is the breakdown of passing scores for the world language exams. In fine arts, we offer 3 AP exams: Studio Art Drawing, Studio Art 2D, and Studio Art 3D. These are portfolio-based exams. Enrollments fluctuate in these courses, and you'll see that just 1 or 2 students take Studio Art 3D, a few more take Studio Art 2D. But within those courses, we have an extremely high passing rate of 100% almost every time. On this chart, you notice we are not sharing the results of the Studio Art 3D to protect the identity of the students, but this is the breakdown of 5s, 4s, and 3s. The next 3 slides is the supporting information for that analysis that you can take a look at when this is posted tomorrow. Finally, this summary slide shows the courses that saw an overall increase in scores on the right, an overall decrease in scores on the left, and the courses whose passing rate remained flat from 2019 to 2020. So there were big gains, as mentioned, in European history, but also computer science, AB Calc, Latin, U.S. history, physics, C, E and M, English language and composition, and biology. The courses that saw a decrease in the passing rate include environmental science, Italian, English literature, macroeconomics, microeconomics, physics 2, psychology, U.S. government and politics, and human geography. In summary, our AP courses are highly enrolled with some annual fluctuations across specific courses. Most of the decreases we saw last year have recovered this year. The majority of our students do take the AP exam despite the fact that it is not a requirement. And most impressive is that 94% of all exams taken earned a passing score, and 96% of our students passed at least one of the exams they took. When looking at the breakdown of scores, most of our exams have a high percentage of 4s and 5s as well, although we did see a shift in 2020 with a lower percentage of 5s and a higher number of 4s and 3s. We would certainly attribute that to the way the spring unfolded, and we would look to see if that continues next year when or this year when we return to a more traditional full-length exam. Ms. Smith?
Thank you, Ms. Fox. The next part of our presentation will focus on college admissions data, specifically trends in applications, acceptances, and matriculation for the class of 2020. So this is a snapshot of the Ridge class of 2020. You'll see there were 456 graduates. 95% continued their education. The breakdown there is that 88% attended a 4-year school, and that includes non-US colleges. 7% attended a 2-year school, and 5% expressed to us that they were pursuing an other path. Other may include employment, military, unknown, undecided, or a gap year. Compared to last year, the 4-year school rate decreased by 3 percentage points, and the 2-year school rate increased by 2 percentage points. The other category increased by 1 percentage point compared to the class of 2019. As we take a look on the next slide at the class profiles for the previous years, you'll see a number of different categories, the graduating class and the average scores, as well as some application information. So as you take a look at the class of 2020, you'll notice that the class size is slightly smaller than last year. The GPA is slightly higher. PSAT and SAT averages were lower, but ACT was higher. The number of applications submitted was lower by about 160 applications, but the average number of applications per student is about the same, even for the smaller class. So that metric there is steady from last year. The percentage accepted into universities is higher for the class of 2020. 2 categories that I added this year out of interest were that the last 2, the number of schools that the students applied to in total, and then the number of schools attended. So when we talk about the information that we previously saw, the percentage of students who have matriculated to a 2 or 4-year school, how many schools does that actually represent? So you can see in those bottom 2 lines there that students in the class of 2020 applied to 427 total schools and attended 125 total schools. Compared to the prior year class of 2019, students applied to 403 schools and then attended 152. So we'll continue to report out on that category for the years to come. This slide shows the class of 2020 application trends, so what we call the increased interest and the decreased interest. It's important to keep a number of factors in mind when you look at this information. First, the total number of applications can still be high, even if there is a decrease from last year. So specifically on that decreased list, take a look at Cornell's example. It's on the decreased list compared to the class of 2019, but you can still see a high amount of applications are in Cornell. Also, keep in mind that the total applications for a school on the increased list can be on that increased list, but overall can actually be lower in total than a school that's represented on the decreased list. Specifics there are the University of Florida versus Lehigh as examples. The information here are based on the initial applications, not the net applications. So your initial applications are those that the students initially initiate in the beginning of the year, and the net is where they actually end up applying and have not withdrawn or changed their mind. Other thoughts on this information, you can see Clemson in the increased interest. So you can keep in mind that they were the national championship school. Northeastern trends is a mirror here with what Northeastern is reporting. So if you look up admission stats on various different websites or the actual admission site of a college or university itself, you can see if these trends are being reported similarly on their admissions websites. And in most cases, they are. You can also see a lot of peer institutions on this list. Some examples, Wisconsin and Ohio are similar types of schools. And so that alone may push some of those schools to be on an increased list because students are seeing them within a similar lens. Teacher letters of recommendation. So overall, 73 teachers wrote for 690 students. So remember that there were 456 total seniors in the class, but some of them are writing for more than one student. So that's what that total number of letters column represents. Keep in mind that the school counselors write for every senior on their caseload. So that's about 60 letters each, but that's not represented in this data. This is strictly the teachers. And so the range per teacher is anywhere from 1 letter to 40. 40, I will say, is a high outlier. Right immediately below that is 33. So that's the distribution graph that you can look at your bottom right-hand corner of your screen. There were only 6 teachers, to put it in perspective, that were writing for more than 25 students. 13 teachers wrote each only for 1 student. So that kind of gives you an idea of the distribution. The majority, 44 teachers, write for less than 10 students. On the left-hand side of that screen is the department breakdown. So the pie chart will show you that 26% of letters are written from the English department, 22% from science. And for the class of 2019, last year, science was the lead. Math then follows with 17%, and social studies is 15%, and the rest are the other departments. Now, this information on this entire screen does represent only the letters, and that's what the asterisk is indicating, only the letters that are sent via Naviance eDocs. So the eDocs platform is our mechanism by which we send information, our secure submission of information to colleges and universities. And so that's how we're measuring. There are certainly teachers who write and mail postal mail letters. Our college comparison slide shows you the percentage of Ridge applicants that are accepted in various categories of colleges. So all of this data is also pulled from Naviance reports, and the selectivity rankings here are based specifically on Barron's Profile of American Colleges. So the exact metrics to determine which colleges fall within each category is typically privileged information, but that's how the information is reported out through Naviance. And so the acceptance rates are determined based on the total net applications on this screen. So previously I described the difference between initial and net applications. So here we're looking specifically at those net applications. So the final number of applications after students may have changed their mind or withdrawn an application. You may notice a drop in acceptances from the 2018 class for the Ivy Leagues, but that does represent the overall drop in selectivity for Ivies, and Ridge does stand basically at or slightly above the national average selectivity rate at the Ivies itself. The categories most competitive and highly competitive, you can see the high numbers there for the class of 2020, how many are accepted, which represents our Ridge rigorous curriculum. In our next slide, we have the class of 2020 top 10 colleges that are attended. So you can see there are many schools in the top 10 that are tied with one another to get their spot within that top 10. The right-hand column will show you the actual percentage of students that top 10 number represents. And so keep that in mind just for general context when we talk about the top 10, but notes for the class of 2020 are that Rutgers and RVCC are still number 1 and 2 respectively, just like classes of 2018 and 2019. Many of the same schools are in this list, but there may be a variation in rank order per each year. There are more ties in the top 10 this year than there were in the class of 2019. In fact, 7 of the rank levels are tied this year, and there were only 4 last year. The top 4 schools send more than 10 students, and the number 1 and 2 schools send 3 times more than number 4. So you can see that reflected in the percentage of students. Again, context for this information. Rank levels 5 through 10 all send less than 10 students each. And then you can remember earlier that I described that students are attending more than 100 different schools across the country. So we do have a distribution of schools within our class of 2020. Schools that are beyond the top 10 have typically less than 4 students attending each. The top 10 schools represents 66 schools, which is about 53% of the total list of attending schools. And the top 10 schools also represents 256 students, which is 56% of the class of 2020. So all of that information provides the context when you look at that actual top 10 report. The Ivy League colleges, this is a report for the acceptance rate of the class of 2020. This information is based on the net apps. So in 2020, there were 150 net apps and 9 were accepted. That's 60 less applications than the prior cohort class of 2019 and 4 less accepted than 2019. As I mentioned, Ridge ranks either at or slightly above the national selectivity rate, which is extremely selective at the Ivy level. Cornell is number 1 and Penn number 2, which also happen to be the same as the class of 2019. And as you may remember from the previous top 10 slide, that Cornell was actually in the top 10. Next, we'll take a look at our matriculation data for the class of 2019 by type and by state. So these 2 categories by type, you can see the distribution, and I touched on this when I opened up this section of the presentation, of 4-year, 2-year, non-US, and other categories. So the non-US schools are included in the 4-year rate, as I mentioned earlier. On the right-hand side of the screen, you could see matriculation by state, and that is the top 10. You'll see some ties in the top 10 as well. Compared to the class of 2019, some analysis here for you. There are 10 less students for New Jersey schools, 20 less in Pennsylvania. However, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York, the tri-state area, are still the dominating states. Massachusetts holds 4th place again with 10 more students and 4 percentage point increase than the class of 2019. Virginia, DC tie, and both knocked out Maryland out of 5th place this year compared to the class of 2019. Florida, South Carolina took a rise in the chart. North Carolina took a slight dip. And new in the top 10 from last year is Ohio and California. There are ties with 4 states: Virginia, the District of Columbia, Florida, and South Carolina. While we're talking about matriculation, on the next slide, we will take a look at Ridge alumni data and transfer statistics. So typically, in a collaboration between Naviance Alumni Tracker and the National Clearinghouse data, there is an outreach to students in their 2nd semester of their freshman year to collect alumni data and transfer statistics. Typically, and generally speaking, there's a low respondent rate when it comes to this information. And this has been of interest for a couple years to really work on this and develop a homegrown way of receiving and keeping track of this information. So we're looking to make this piece of our Naviance portal a bit more robust. And also we developed a survey for the class of 2020 at the end of the year in June. The seniors, when they provided us with all of their matriculation and attending school, total application school information that I just shared, we asked them, the students, if they would be interested in sharing their personal email for a follow-up survey at this point in their freshman year of college, so their 2nd semester. And we did administer that survey to any of the seniors that indicated that they would be willing to accept a survey. And although we saw a low respondent rate, we do have some information that we wanted to share from that winter 2020 survey. Particularly for this class, we asked the students if they did in fact attend the school that they indicated in June 2020 as they're attending school. Did they in fact matriculate there in fall of 2020? The vast majority said yes. And some students did in fact defer, which I think is important to note in the time of the pandemic. We also asked students if they did transfer. So of the group that responded to this survey, the majority did not. Some said they did. And we also asked out of curiosity, particularly for this year, if the pandemic had an impact on their decision for actually where to attend. And about 68% said no, 26% said in some ways, and less than 10% affirmed yes. So again, this is a homegrown survey. We'll look to keep this as part of this presentation so that we can track particularly transfers. Transfer statistics are important, and our alumni data as well. So this is a goal to keep doing this for future presentations as well. Overall, when we really take into consideration all of the data that we just looked at, there's some general news and context that we like to provide in this presentation. So although we're looking at the year prior for the class of 2020, the current trends and what we saw in last spring are important to discuss. And so you'll see on the screen here just a list of some trends that are provided by the school counseling department, from colleagues, various articles, admissions insiders information, and publications by the National Association of College Admissions Counseling, NACAC. So to highlight a few key points in terms of admissions trends, we're seeing a lot of activity on the virtual front, which comes as no surprise in the pandemic. So a significant rise in interactions, be it virtual tours, college fairs, college rep visits. There's a larger capacity and a reality to visiting schools, and vice versa, schools visiting with students that otherwise may have been too far, or representatives may not have been willing or able to travel that distance to represent their university. So this is a positive thing, and there's a positive experience being reported on both user ends, colleges and students. So we're anticipating that there would be some sort of continuation after the pandemic, and we'll see how this virtual experience changes that landscape. Self-reporting trends continue. Self-reporting test scores. We highlighted earlier in this presentation the test optional, very widely popular trend that we saw increasing significantly, again, due to the pandemic, as well as test optional policies increasing total applications. And so students who are interested in applying may not have otherwise due to test scores. We're seeing overall publications announcing an increase in applications, upwards to even 20% by some institutions. So naturally the average selectivity rate may decrease due to the steady growth in application volume and an increase of waitlist action as a result. So heading to the waitlist earlier, deferments earlier due to a bigger pool to review this year for admissions representatives. Early action activity is being reported as continuing, bridge, gateway programs, especially for larger institutions, and a focus on mental health. So just like the secondary level, the post-secondary level, even the Ivy Leagues have different collaboratives. Ms. Fox and I have discussed our interest in Stanford's Challenge Success program, and like I said, a number of the Ivy Leagues and other highly selective schools are focusing on mental health as well. So that kind of gives you an idea, just to highlight some trends of college admissions news to keep in context with all of the data and graphs and information that we previously viewed. On the next slide, for those of you that are a visual or have the artistic flair, this is a representation of that top colleges slide that I showed you earlier. And so the photo courtesy goes to Dr. Mary Jane McNally. So the school media specialist who produces this as a result of the matriculation and attending schools rate for each of the graduating classes. So this was the image, the Wordle, as it's called, a world cloud visual representation of the colleges where the class of 2020 has attended. So we just wrapped up the college admissions data, but this presentation is about post-secondary preparedness. And so Ms. Fox and I definitely wanted to include a section on career readiness and preparing for the post-secondary world of work. So this is another piece that's directly related to post-secondary. We know that one of the district goals is to provide students with a greater opportunity to understand how their personal strengths and interests align with 21st century career pathways. And so to that end, that's why we decided to add this section, as we're continuously looking at ways to enhance those experiences and come up with different metrics we can use to include in this report. So that being said, what I'd like to share here is that in regards to providing kids an opportunity to align their personal strengths and interests with potential career pathways, all sophomores complete a Naviance career assessment. It's called the Career Interest Profiler. And so this is based on Holland's theory of career choice. And so it matches the student's personality type and interest with potential career clusters that may fit them. From the results of this survey, students are encouraged to explore the Naviance platform and investigate different careers that may be of interest to them. So the curriculum has been updated over the past couple years to include a debriefing of the assessment, what it means, to discuss the career clusters, and a Naviance tour as well. So Naviance, the organization, has also announced some enhancements specifically to career exploration as it relates to post-secondary preparation. So these enhancements are a new announcement this spring. Ridge High School has been participating in a pilot program, and all Naviance users will be able to use the new features in fall of 2021. So I anticipate that there will be more to report out on those features and how we intend on having students take advantage of them. Of course, another career readiness opportunity our students have is through Mr. John Brum, the amazing coordinator of the senior internship program at Ridge High School. Our students have two pathways, either the year-long pathway for a portion of their school day, or a concentrated pathway for May and June, where for the full school day, they are working in an internship or apprenticeship position with a local organization, business, or school, whatever is really of their interest. So Mr. John Brum coordinates that program and provides those students with an opportunity to really be hands-on and to get experience in the real world their senior year. Ms. Fox and I also share the passion for this part of post-secondary planning. So we love this career work, and we have worked together to pull together a group of teachers and counselors to form a program evaluation committee. So this group is formed with K-12 representation, as I mentioned, and the purpose of the group is to determine what Mr. Brum calls the state of the state. So we're assessing our current state. Where are we with career exploration K through 12? And what's some preliminary research out there? What are other districts doing when it comes to programming? What's the university level doing when it comes to career preparation? So we have worked so far the past summer of 2020, we met with our program evaluation team. And this past fall, we've been in touch with them to establish questions and to create initial surveys for staff, students, and parents as a part of this career development program evaluation. So what to take from that tonight is that the future focus of that group is to make recommendations in the fall of 2021 for program improvements over the next 5 years. So Ms. Fox and I will continue to report out on the work of that committee, looking to expand career development and career readiness for post-secondary preparation. So this is our summary slide for the first 3 sections. If you recall, I mentioned that the presentation is divided into 4 sections. We have covered everything tonight to recap for you for the class of 2020, standardized admissions testing, AP scores, subject tests, college admissions data, and career readiness. So all of that falls under the umbrella of post-secondary preparedness. But specifically for this year, because we're here in this moment, we wanted to take the opportunity to update you all on the AP testing plan for the spring of 2021, considering the significant changes to the plan that we have and to the College Board's announcements that they have in terms of AP testing. We wanted to provide that information for you all. So with no further ado, I'll turn it back to Ms. Fox.
Thank you. So as I mentioned and described earlier, the College Board responded quickly to the crisis last year and completely redesigned the test to accommodate the virtual learning environment worldwide and to recognize the impact of interrupted education and remote learning on all of the courses. I would be remiss without saying what the extent to which the teachers and the students went to continue their coursework and to prepare for the exams and do as well as they did is commendable and outstanding. Now for 2021, the College Board is offering both in-person exams and digital exams. But the digital exams this year will look very different than they did last year. So if you go to the next slide, Mr. Syed, the characteristics of the digital 2020 exams are in the right column. And the characteristics of the digital exams for 2021 are in the middle in blue. Last year, as I said, the emergency exams were shortened to 45 minutes. They only included free response questions with no multiple choice. Students were submitting their work with photos and handwritten responses. They were certainly dependent upon their computers and their own internet at home. And in world languages, only the speaking skill was assessed. For 2021, these digital exams will now be full length, so around 3 hours. They will include multiple choice and free response in most of the digital exams. They will not be submitting photos of exams, but completing the exams on the computer. Finally, for the world language exams, we don't offer the music theory, but for world language, this exam is only offered in the digital format, primarily because student access to online translation tools would not allow for a secure and fair assessment of the reading and writing skills in world languages. So they will only be permitted to take those exams in person in school. So on February 4th, the College Board released their exam schedule, and we have spent the last few weeks analyzing their guidance and finalizing the 2021 Ridge High School exam schedule. The College Board is providing 3 different test windows and essentially 4 different test platforms. So this includes the traditional in-person exam, the digital at-home exam, the digital in-school exam, and the world language exams that are in-person and computer-based. Not all of the exam formats can be given in each of the 3 test windows. In fact, in test window 1, those exams can only be given in person. Test window 3 can only be given in school or at home digitally. And in the second test window, there is a combination of digital and in-person exams, but they are not the same for each course. Very complicated. So on this slide, you can see by course how in each test administration window, there is a different, there's a variety of formats which the College Board is offering and allowing districts to implement this spring. So for example, if you look at AP Biology in test window number 1, the assessment can only be given in school, paper and pencil. And in administration window 2, it can only be given in school digitally or at home digitally, cannot be given in school, paper and pencil. And in administration 3, again, it is also a digital, either in school or at home exam. So that looks different for each exam. Next. There are 2 links here for anyone interested in reading about the guidance and the schedule provided by the College Board. I will warn you, they are several hundred pages long. In order to determine our schedule, we gathered input from the teachers of each course, who also spoke to their students. We then worked with the Ridge administration to map out the schedule found on the next slide, I'm including here later. So with the input from all parties, we believe we've developed a testing schedule that is in the best interest of the students in each course and that we can logistically manage given our unique circumstances. The College Board has provided a tremendous amount of guidance and flexibility for students and districts in response to this public continuing public health emergency, but it has ultimately left the determination of the testing schedule entirely up to districts. What we considered were those two things. One, what's best for students by course in what terms of what they are prepared for, and what logistically can be managed in the high school while we are also working to increase in-person instruction for all students. So this is a picture of the exam schedule for 2021. This will be sent to students and families in the morning with a letter describing all of the details and the parameters that students need to know. But from this, you can see that we have by course determined which test window and which platform we will be implementing. There are 3 categories exams that classify the way exams in each category were scheduled and help understand the way we've organized this schedule. The first category includes all of the world language exams. As I mentioned, they're required to be taken in person. They all include a computer-based component. Since there's no digital version available for this exam to be taken at home or in school, or to be taken at home off-site, the AP coordinators will be contacting students individually to determine whether or not they would like a refund of the registration fee. The second category of exams, on the next slide, are exams that we are scheduling for the in-person paper-based format in one of either test window 1 or test window 2. Some are in the first window and some are in the second, based on the way the College Board is offering them. We are recommending this format for these exams as we feel it best aligns with the preparation the students have had for the course and the exam. For any students who are unable to come to school for any reason, they will be asked to complete a form in Genesis requesting that they are scheduled for the alternate digital version of the exam in the very next test window. For some, that would move the test to the second window, and for others, it would move it to the third test window. We do encourage students to consider carefully making this request and realize that the teachers are preparing students for these courses for the paper-based exam, in most cases, 2 weeks prior to when the digital exams are then given. In the third category of exams, we are scheduling each of these exams for the digital version of the exam in the second test window. These are full-length exams taken at home. Teachers who recommended this option decided that the differences in the exam platforms did not outweigh the benefit of gaining additional instructional time. Despite that, if any students would like to request the ability to take the in-school paper-based exam, they can do so by making a request to the appropriate supervisor. They're listed here and they will be in the letter I send out in the morning. These requests will be considered based upon our ability to administer them in school safely. So it will depend entirely on the number of requests and our available spaces for scheduling in-person exams. Please know that we will practice all safety protocols for the in-person exams that we are practicing every day in school. There is, of course, the chance that a student will become ill or quarantined before they take the test they're scheduled to take. In fact, an entire class might even be quarantined. In any of those cases, the College Board is providing ample opportunities for students to make up exams, and that information will be shared with students if that happens. We are working on some specific cases where students are scheduled to take 2 exams at the same time. Those students will be contacted by their teacher and or the AP coordinators to resolve those conflicts. So this is quite a lot of information to take in. So remember that all of this information will be emailed tomorrow morning to students and families, and it will be posted on the district and the Ridge website. On the next slide, I'm also sharing information here that will be in the letters and on the websites about 2 open Zoom meetings. So as you sift through this information and think about the exam schedule and any questions you have, if you look on the next slide, we do have 2 dates where we will answer questions. Is there one more slide, Mr. Syed?
No, Ms. Fox, this is the last slide.
Oh, well, there are 2 dates. One is March 23rd at 1 p.m. and the other is March 25th at 7 p.m. That will be in the letter tomorrow and it will be on the website, and we will communicate that as it gets closer. It's intended to give you some time to look at the schedule, hear from your teachers, maybe ask their for their input. And then if you have more questions, you can attend one of the open Zoom meetings for clarifications. That does conclude our presentation for this evening. At this time, there was a lot of information presented, but we would certainly be willing to answer some questions of the board. Ms. Beckman?
Ms. Beckman.
Thank you.
That was a lot of information. So I have just a question. So if you're requesting people to do in person, whether they're virtual or in person?
The test is being scheduled that way, but they will simply have to let us know that they will be taking the exam digitally, and they will then be scheduled for that test, which is in the next test window.
Okay. And do you get to a point where there's too many people in person and then they'll have to do it virtually?
Not the way we've scheduled it, and as we are planning it, the only area that is we have to take case by case are the exams we've scheduled digitally at home. Encourage students to consider carefully making this request and realize that the teachers. I hear myself for some reason. Do you hear me? Courses for the paper-based exam. It's really weird. I don't know. I don't know. Oh, is that you?
No,
right.
It's not from me.
Okay. Well, I don't know. That was really weird to hear myself talking. But right, the one category that we are going to have to see whether we have the capacity for is where we are offering the digital at-home exams. If we have any requests that students would prefer to take it earlier in person, we will only be able to accommodate that if we have space, a room, a proctor for whatever number of requests we get for each exam. But certainly any student who is needing to or preferring to take it digitally will have that option.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say yay about the program evaluation focus group for the career readiness. I think that's amazing and wonderful. And I'm so excited that you are doing this. And I look forward to seeing what the results are. So thank you for that. And for the entire presentation, by the way, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other board member questions? I see Jen Korn's hand.
I was wondering I was just curious how many people of last year's graduates that I think it was Stephanie that you reached out to who said, and how many of them responded? Can you tell me like how many? What was the number instead of just a percentage? I was just curious as to how many would have.
So the percentages there represent less than 50 students. So what we would consider a low respondent rate.
I don't see any other hands. Anybody else? Okay, I guess you answered all the questions in the presentation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
With that, I think we're up to superintendent's report, Mr. Markarian.
Sorry, mouse died. I couldn't unmute. Luckily had another mouse handy. So yeah, who would think? The superintendent's report, one simple item under superintendent's report is our Board of Education meeting schedule. We had a couple dates that we needed to tweak. One in the summer, moving back a week in July from the 26th to the 19th. And the other item that we needed to address was our public hearing on the budget, which in order to be consistent with the requisite budget calendar for submitting a school district budget, we needed to be able to have a meeting on May 3rd. We were scheduled for May 10th, so we backed it up a week to May 3rd. So that's all this is, just a couple of tweaks to our schedule for meetings. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so then we are up to public comment on agenda items. So
I'm sorry, Madam President, maybe we could just get a show of hands at least on that item for the changing the schedule for our
Oh,
Board
I'm
of Ed
sorry.
meetings.
Yes, of course we can. I'm sorry. All right. Can we have a show of hands? Is everyone comfortable with that? I see.
And I
see
think we're
everybody.
good. I see everybody's hand. Took me a minute to scroll through in our Zoom view here. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Sorry about that. Okay, so now we are up to public comment on agenda items, and we'll check in with Ms. Fox. Do we have anyone waiting?
No, we do not.
We do not have anyone waiting. And Mr. Syed, do we have any email or text comments?
Nothing on agenda items, no.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Then we will move on to the approval of minutes. So can I please have a motion? Mr. Salmon and Mrs. White. And then a roll call, please, Mr. McLaughlin.
Salmon,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Ms. Beckman,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
I'm going to abstain, since I wasn't there.
Ms. Hira,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray.
Yes,
Madam President, thank you.
thank you. With that, our next item is the Finance Committee report. Mr. Salmon?
There's just one item on the agenda, which is a standing item, and we are meeting next week. So no report yet.
Okay, thank you very much. Can we have a motion, please? I'm sorry, I'm toggling, so I apologize for the delay. Ms. Richmond and Ms. McEwen. And then a roll call, please, Mr. McLaughlin.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Ms. Beckman,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Ms. Hira,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray.
Yes,
Madam President, thank you.
thank you. Okay, our next item is the Personnel Committee report, and we will be tabling item 7 this evening. So Mrs. McCune?
Personnel has not met since our last meeting, so I don't have a report. And I think we're meeting next week. Pretty sure.
Okay, so could we please have a motion? Mr. Salmon and Ms. Korn, and then a roll call, please, Mr. McLaughlin.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Ms. Beckman,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Ms. Hira,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray.
Yes,
Madam President, thank you.
thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Our next item is the Policy Committee report. Mrs. Korn, do we have a report this evening?
No, we just met today, so I'll report out the next meeting.
Okay.
Oh, we have one thing on the,
Yes.
there's one thing on the
Yep.
agenda, and it's the first reading for the calendar, for the 2021, 2020, no, 2022,
21, 22.
21,
calendar.
22 calendar. with the changes for the starting of school. So it doesn't land on Rosh Hashanah.
So can we have a motion for that item, please? Mrs. Richmond and Mrs. Beckman? And a roll call, please.
Simon?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Ms. Beckman?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Korn?
Yes.
Ms. Hira?
Yes.
Mrs. McCune?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Madam President, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Our next item is the Curriculum Committee report. Mrs. White, do you have one this evening?
Oh, I sure do. Curriculum
Gorgeous.
met on March 5th. We began with an update on the music program. Mr. Fackelman began with a review of the current status of the fine and performing arts programs, which have been limited thus far. Currently, visual art classes are taking place in art rooms at WAMS and Ridge. At K-5, staff are teaching virtually as their rooms are being used as needed space for relocated classes. At Ridge, strings and orchestra are currently taking place in the orchestra room. Band students are not playing instruments in person, although when the weather was warmer, students were able to do so. Vocal and choral students are not singing in person, and the focus of classes have been music appreciation, with singing taking place at home. At WAMS, music ensemble classes are taking place virtually. Cycle music classes are taking place in person with modified lessons to eliminate singing. K-5 music specials are taking place virtually. As of March 1st, instrumental and strings began receiving in-person instruction, and lessons continue to be offered virtually. The school survey provided by the county arts administrators was reviewed to get a sense of how other districts are handling music programs. Not surprisingly, a variety of offerings based on differing schools' number of students, size of classrooms, and ventilation systems was found. Utilizing the COVID-19 Handbook, Volume 1, Strategies for Safely Opening Elementary and Secondary Schools, Mr. Fackelman presented possible options to begin the process of returning to teaching performing arts K-12 in the traditional manner. The proposal for the music program is to resume in-person instrumental and choral instruction utilizing evidence-based mitigation measures to reduce aerosols. In some buildings, music teaching spaces have been reallocated for other uses. At Ridge, some classrooms may need to be flipped in order to address the issue of proper ventilation when classes are back-to-back, such as the case for choir held 8th and 9th period. 8th period could begin in the choir room with 30 minutes designated to singing, and then the next 30 minutes in the pack for other activities to allow for airflow in the choir room before the start of 9th period, and then the same schedule could be followed for 9th period. A proposal for visual arts is to resume instruction within the confines of visual arts rooms with safety protocols required in all other classrooms, such as social distancing, sanitizing desktops, and proper ventilation. It may not be possible to do so across the board at all the elementary schools, as in some buildings, the rooms are not available for use, and in-person teaching may then need to resume via teacher on a car. It's also suggested that in the future, phasing a return to the visual arts classrooms by grade level might be an approach used as a way to limit movement while cautiously moving back to normalcy when possible. For example, at schools where visual arts rooms are available, have K-1 return to having specials in those classrooms with grades 2 through 5 remaining with the CART system initially. Performing arts students will continue with regular studio instruction at WAMS and Ridge for dance and theater electives. At Ridge, extracurricular dance and drama club have resumed with limited times using NJSIAA protocols. A spring musical is planned at the PVP Amphitheater and will use the same protocols as the fall productions. The scheduling of the spring dance showcase is currently being explored. A brief update was given about K-5 special area recommendations, and we'll have a detailed more follow-up will be provided in personnel. A recommendation to make a shift in specials will depend on staffing. The tentative recommendation is to restore 2 technology teachers, so there is an additional teacher in each elementary building, as opposed to the current model with 2 tech teachers, each responsible for 2 elementary schools. By doing this, 3 issues will be addressed. 1, it is not ideal to share a tech teacher, and this will be eliminated. 2, Quest will be improved if all students have blocks of time and no longer are pulled from their classroom. And 3, the staff shift will provide additional support in mathematics in each building. The program will be more flexible and allow for differentiation for identified students. Technology, media, and Quest curricula will need to be rewritten to make this happen. Identified Quest students will have opportunities for differentiation with the media specialist, technology teacher, and/or Quest teacher as needed. This added teacher would also provide enrichment for a greater number of students. While planning for the 2021-22 school year, exploration of the Quest program has begun. Therefore, ways to provide an enrichment special area program for all students, as well as increased math support, are being explored, and a final recommendation will be made in the spring. We discussed the new AP schedule that Ms. Fox reviewed earlier this evening, so I will not repeat the same information. We had an update on Project Lead the Way. In 2016, the Academy system with the biomedical pathway, computer science pathway, and an engineering pathway was implemented. Project Lead the Way at the time of implementation offered students ample opportunities such as dual enrollment courses, preferential college admissions, and scholarships provided through partnerships with the AP College Board, but these opportunities have dissolved. The Academy model has been abandoned, but some of those courses are still offered as electives. Project Lead the Way is also costly, as there's an annual licensing fee and course training that's necessary for teachers. And it's possible that 2 teachers would be needed next year in order to continue offering the program. Many of the opportunities and benefits that were provided through Project Lead the Way have dissolved. Therefore, changes will be made and will be implemented for the 2021-22 school year, as it makes most sense to eliminate Project Lead the Way and create our own program utilizing the materials we already have. It will allow more creativity for our staff and allow flexibility in staffing and room use when developing the Ridge Master Schedule. It was proposed to eliminate Introduction to Engineering Design, as we have ample parallel tech ed offerings such as Advanced Architecture, CAD 1 and CAD 2, and condense Principles of Biomedical Science, Human Body Systems, and Medical Interventions into a single course, Anatomy and Physiology, and potentially offer CP and honors options concurrently. Rising juniors and seniors who've taken any of the courses in the biomedical science pathway will be eligible to take the new course in its place. Dr. Lasvik gave a brief update on National Honor Society. Due to COVID, opportunities for community service for students have been limited, and the 10th grade requirement was waived this year. This impacts the community service requirement for National Honor Society. Standards for community service are still being held when considering applications, but flexibility is being provided. Next year, criteria for consideration may need to be revised, but decisions do not need to be made at this time in regards to how COVID-19 constraints impacted qualifications for induction into National Honor Society. Beginning in the 2021-22 school year, each school district will be required to incorporate instruction on diversity and inclusion in an appropriate place in the curriculum for students K through 12 as part of the district's implementation of the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. The district will be moving forward with the development of a district-wide diversity and inclusivity committee. As part of the district's plan, Mr. Syatt Ms. Fox and Ms. Smith will work together to look at diversity and inclusivity issues as they relate to curricular programming, personnel, and professional development and student services. Ms. Fox will follow up with the student government to resume discussions that began last spring. Ms. Smith and the counseling department will be participating in a diversity, equity, and inclusion specialist training, a 50-hour certification course offered by ASCA. A presentation on the Berners Township Big Sibling Program was shared. The goal in the creation of this program was to provide opportunities for rich students, bigs, to mentor and have relationships with elementary or younger middle school students, littles, for the purpose of meeting academic, organizational, and socialization needs of younger children while providing meaningful volunteer opportunities virtually. The program began this year for students identified in grades 3 through 5 who were not receiving services but were thought may benefit to having a mentor. Some of these students needed to feel a sense of belonging and connectiveness that was missing due to the pandemic. Students engage in a variety of activities via Zoom, such as reading aloud, practicing math facts, playing games such as Uno, and social interaction. Bigs participate in training. It's been a very successful program, and those involved want to continue to participate during the summer. At WAMS and Ridge, the RTI, Response to Intervention Team, formerly referred to as the 504 team, has been addressing what can be done to help identify disengaged and struggling students so that they can be successful. Students can be referred by parents, teachers, or counselors to RTI due to concerns such as those related to academics, behavior issues, or even problems with executive functioning. Students can be identified from data collected on attendance, grades, changes in grades over time, and changes in a student's profile. The team is made up of Stephanie Orr, assistant principals, guidance counselor, teachers, and nurses, and meet every 8 to 10 weeks about students to set 1 or 2 goals for each student. Interventions are ongoing and therefore can get tweaked as necessary. A counselor meets with students regularly. Some of the things worked on may be breaking down assignments, learning how to use Genesis, how to check work for completion, learning how to better follow rubrics, self-advocating skills, and learning how to use notes to study. They've seen a lot of success since RTI implementation. We had a brief update on marking period 2, blended versus virtual grades. Following marking period 1, data was looked at to compare the performance of virtual students versus those in blended learning. The same was done following the completion of marking period 2. The outcome was essentially the same. There is no major discrepancy that demonstrates virtual students are performing or receiving higher grades than those in blended learning. Within departments, there may be 1 or 2 courses where there is a 2 to 3 point discrepancy, sometimes favoring blended learners, other times favoring virtual. But once again, there is no consistent pattern. Once again, the district has been charged with submitting data between March 15th and no later to April 15th, according to the New Jersey Department of Education. We will be required to report on student performance on local assessments in ELA, math, and science. The template needed to complete for submission is not going to be released until March 15th. And at this time, it's unknown what will need to be submitted. Time is being spent now looking at what can be used to determine students, whether they are above grade level, on grade level, or below grade level. And assessments administered prior to February 19th cannot be used to determine this. We had a brief update on summer interventions. We're working on program offerings for summer interventions, and we'll have a recommendation finalized by our April curriculum meeting. We need to be careful about what is offered. It needs to benefit our students and not make matters worse if being in school in the summer will increase student stress or disengagement. We want to create a summer experience that is positive for all students who are invited to participate. As reported at a previous meeting, the kindergarten program that was run last summer will be offered again and extended to 1st grade. Currently under consideration is whether expanding this to 2nd and 3rd graders with a focus on word study and phonics is needed. An additional program being looked into is called Cadence, which is a 5-week ELA and math program. Questions being explored is if this is the type of program that we want to purchase for 1st through 8th grade. Do we have enough staff to run it? And will we have students interested in participating, and could grant money help fund it? And then lastly, there was an update on planning and phase 2. A major consideration in planning how to go forward with full day instruction is the number of students currently attending in person, in addition to those students whose parents choose to make a shift, and how they attend school for the next marking period. Impacts on social distancing will need to be considered. Parents will be asked to make a request in Genesis beginning Friday, March 12th, with all decisions submitted by March 19th. Parents can choose for each child to remain in the program they're in, or to change from virtual to in-person, or in-person to virtual. The default if a submission is not made is to remain in their current mode. Time is needed to plan for any change, as increased numbers of students impact sections, groupings, classrooms. But this information, in addition to considering health conditions, will determine the timeline and if we're able to move forward. Added outdoor seating, such as picnic tables at Ridge and elementary schools, is being looked into for the spring. WAMS currently has some outdoor seating, so that students could have a place to gather and potentially eat if lunch is added back into the school day. Our next curriculum meeting will be April 9th. Does anybody have any questions? I know that was a lot of information.
Any questions? Mrs. Corn.
The test, the NJDOE's like, it sounds like a crazy, whatever their crazy plan is, this testing thing. Are they, what are we're using our own assessments, right? And then who is it for? Is it for like the same grades that so all grades, like 2nd through?
Well, the memo we did receive was very specific and more broad than the NJSLA testing. So for ELA, it was grades K through 10. For science, it is K through 8 and bio, physics, and chem and earth sciences. So there's a long list. It essentially covers all of the students in the district.
Oh, that sounds like an easy.
Right. So the other piece of that I was going to clarify is we have to use an assessment that was given prior to February 19th. So we have to have already administered it. And
Just February 19th.
Right, which already passed.
But can you use the MAP testing? Can that be used for any of that?
I don't really know, because like I said, we haven't had further guidance and we're awaiting a template. That would certainly potentially assist us with some of the students, but not everybody listed to be reported on.
Right, because not everyone takes the MAP, right?
Right. We're certainly looking into different things, but.
Well, I'm sorry that you have to do that, because it sounds like a real big waste of our time when we have a lot of other really huge things we're trying to deal with. Number one, getting our kids back to school.
The memo did indicate, it is tied potentially to some of the grant money that has become available, and potentially to the waiver that the New Jersey Department of Education has requested for standardized testing. So it could be related to both of those items.
What does that mean?
So you know that the New Jersey Department of Education submitted or is requesting a waiver from the NJSLA. This data may be related to that waiver request.
So if they get the data, they can get the waiver, meaning kind of like that?
I know I've seen some people make a request to use local assessment data instead of the NJSLA. I'm speculating, but that is certainly a possibility.
So you don't really even know what kind of data you'd have to
we don't know the template or the format, right? We don't know.
And what kind
we don't know if it's for every student or if it's for groups of students.
Right, because would it be each class who gets the same test, or how would you compare the tests? Or, I mean, there's a lot of...
Right, so we're waiting. They are doing a pilot right now, and that's basically what we're waiting for. They're piloting it in some districts, and that's why they aren't sharing with us the template.
So today's March, what, 8th?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they want you by the April 15th, and they're going to give you this thing that they're testing on March 15th?
Correct.
Sounds crazy. I mean, it's crazy. What the heck is wrong with these people? I mean, do they know that you have other jobs to do? I mean, my God. Well, all right. Well, let's see how that goes. Sounds like a crazy New Jersey state plan. So
We'll see. We'll keep you posted.
Any other questions for Mrs. White? Mrs. Beckman?
Just a quick question on the Bernards Township Big Sibling Program. Is that still open for kids to join, either as the big or?
I mean, the answer is yes. There is a process through which the program students are being recommended on both ends. There's a vetting process for the mentors, right? And then there are students being recommended for it. And so they have to be paired, when you have matches. But they are certainly looking to expand it because it has gone so well.
Okay. If someone's interested, how do they get in touch, or are they just chosen by the teachers?
So are you talking about at the high school level, like to be a mentor?
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm actually going to have to find out and let you know. I know that this has been a vehicle for students at the high school to participate in some community service, right, during the closure, because it is virtual. So I know it's being shared that way internally, but I can certainly look into how it's, where it's posted, whether it's available to all students or not, and I can get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other questions for Mrs. White? All right, seeing none, our next item is the Wellness Committee report. Ms. Schaefer?
Wellness met about a week and a half ago, and Ms. Smith and I will get the minutes out to the Board of Ed tomorrow, and we'll report out next time.
Thank you very much. Okay, then our next item is liaison committee reports. Anyone?
I don't have a report.
Yeah, and I don't, SCESC didn't report, did it, Mrs. Richmond? I mean, meet, sorry.
No, we haven't met yet. I think next week we're supposed to meet.
Okay.
Or maybe this week, actually. No, next month, April.
All right, that's it, I think, on the liaison committees. So that brings us to public comment on non-agenda items. Ms. Fox, do we have anyone in the waiting room?
Yes, we do. There is one person there. I will let them in. It says Audrika Shattaraj. Hello, Audrika. Hi.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
So you can introduce yourself and share your comment.
Okay, great. So hello, I'm Audrika Shattaraj, and I live at 6 Wharton Way, and I'm the president of the Rich Forensic Speech and Debate team at the high school. Our team has been so lucky to be able to continue to compete and excel on the state and national level. We have won the Yale National Tournament, the George Mason University Tournament, and the UPenn Tournament. And we have 38 members qualified to the National Catholic Forensics League and 19 people qualified to the University of Kentucky Tournament of Champions. Saying all that, I can also quite honestly say that I haven't competed alongside my teammates in literally a whole year. So with our state season soon coming to a close, we would just like to ask the Board of Education for one thing, and that is a chance to let our members to compete at the high school for the New Jersey State Tournament on March 20th. I hope that the school could approve this and allow our team to truly feel the camaraderie that could really bring us to the next level.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
We have someone else. I will let Amy Huang in. Hello, Amy. You are muted, but you are in the meeting. So if you want to unmute yourself, you can make your comment.
Awesome. Sorry. Hi, y'all. I just realized
Hi.
the YouTube stream is on a delay, so I was
Yes.
a couple seconds behind.
No problem.
Hi, my name is Amy Huang. I'm at 18 Vanderveer Drive in Basking Ridge, obviously, and I am the Vice President of Ridge Forensics. To continue what Audrika was saying earlier, I just wanted to add that over the course of this school year, we have done everything we can to try to replicate that feeling of competing in person. But there really comes a point where asking our teammates to get on yet another Zoom after spending hours debating and delivering speeches, it's honestly just it's not possible at that point. Going through all of the photos from years past and seeing the smiles and camaraderie at both local and national tournaments, I see the experience that's being taken away from a lot of the freshmen that have recently joined. As a senior, I got nearly 3 years of weekly competitions, bus ride sing-alongs, pre-competition vocal warm-ups, and cheering award ceremonies. But for many of those on the team who have just joined this year, they have yet to fully get that experience. I believe there is one more person in the waiting room.
Oh, you're all finished?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Yep, we have 2 more people. So I'll let Rippy Carta in. She's next. Hello.
Hi, Ms. Fox, and thank you very much, Board of Ed members. Your meeting tonight has been extremely useful. The topics discussed, I feel like I need to go back and re-listen to this session. It's been really wonderful. I'm here tonight, Rippy Carta, 58 Independence Drive. I'm here to support the Ridge Forensics team to ask the board to sincerely consider and respectfully consider their request to have an in-person session at the school, similarly to what we afford the sports teams and other clubs and other sports clubs or sports teams. I'd like to see the forensics team be able to hold a session in person at the school where they are utilizing their masks, 1 student per classroom, with their masks on, and where they're able to compete and discuss strategies to further their initiatives and further their advancement in their individual competition. It's been a very tough year for the forensics team, and they've made great strides under their coach and their coaches and their advisors. They've sacrificed so much, and these kids are extremely talented. As we all know, the Ridge Forensics team brings great pride and joy to Ridge High School. And I do think that we should really think about how we can support them better, so that the seniors who are graduating, the juniors that are rising up to be seniors, can achieve the goals that they've set for themselves, rather than being home and being virtual and being in a situation where it's not really a competitive environment where they can thrive and succeed. They all need to be in person at the school, masked according to whatever the rules set by this Board of Ed, whatever you all think is appropriate, but they need to come in and they need to be able to make their speeches or have their PF debates or whatever their events are. They need to do them in person in the school using the guidelines that have been established for other clubs, and also have those applicable in an equitable manner to the Ridge Forensics team. They are absolutely amazing. They bring great pride. I'm so incredibly proud of this incredible club. They achieve so much, and each and every student on that club brings it their whole heart, and they've done so incredibly well during this COVID time. I think it is a very small ask. I ask the Board of Ed to treat the Ridge Forensics team the same as they treat any other club and any other sports team. And thank you so much for tonight's presentation. It was actually very helpful. And I just really also want to take this time to also say to Ms. Fox, you are absolutely amazing. You always reach out to the parent. Everything make us feel supported. And I personally appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have 1 more person in the waiting room, Nikayla Carta Marak. Hello. Hi.
My name is Michaela Carter-Maroke. I live at 58 Independence Drive, Basking Ridge, New Jersey, and I am the current secretary treasurer of the Ridge Forensics team. I know you've all just heard from my mom, Audrika, and Amy, and I'm here to continue that conversation. Mr. Yashemsky, our head coach and advisor, submitted a proposal back in February to allow us to compete in person. However, it unfortunately was rejected. The Ridge Forensics team is simply asking the Board of Education to allow us to compete in person on March 20th for our state tournament. This tournament is a big deal for our team, and we feel that being in person will enhance our experience. Masks would be worn in common areas such as the atrium and cafeteria, as well as social distancing protocols will be followed. Students will only take off their masks in their individual classrooms to compete for the duration of their performance, and students will not be allowed to enter other classrooms. We simply ask during this time for equality, as many sports teams have been allowed to participate in their activity, but we have not. We need a sense of team camaraderie right now, and we hope this can be achieved through in-person competition. And of course, thank you all for everything you've been doing for the school district during this time.
Thank you. That is the last person in the waiting room, Mrs. Gray.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Mr. Syed, do we have written comments?
Yes, we do. The first public comment is from Mark Matarazzo, 29 Spencer Road. We all recognize that this school year has been a challenge. Since the beginning of the school year, parents have asked repeatedly for details on what the BOE's plan was to get students back to 5 full in-person days. Despite repeated requests, we have not been provided with a comprehensive plan containing estimated timelines, milestones, contingencies, discrepancies, etc. No plan documentation, link, or Google Doc was provided to publicly view the detailed plan. We know that there was a plan as the students didn't just arbitrarily go back in person. There was a reason why, such as the Cali score going to yellow, which led to all grades back on February 22nd, and the current rumor is 5 full days after spring break. We can look back in hindsight and piece together what the plan was, but knowing in hindsight is not helpful. We shouldn't have to be detectives to determine what is going to happen with our children's education. As parents, we need to be able to prepare for the things that are going to impact the children and our lives. We need to set our children up for success, which we cannot do if we are kept in the dark or only given tidbits of information during BOE meetings or SOS Express letters telling us what decisions have already been made. We need to see that flow and decision tree of what the potential decisions are that might get made and when and why with all alternatives. This way we can see what might be coming and set up our own plans and be able to pivot based on the outcome. We cannot do that if we aren't always aware of the plan. Throughout the BOE meetings, we have heard BOE members make the following statements when the community is asking for a detailed plan. We are moving forward and we should all be happy. There is a plan in motion. We have a plan moving forward. Good news should not get lost and go over people's heads. The plan is we are moving forward in the next phase, and it's important for people to hear that we are moving forward. These comments with the BOE, which we have heard repeatedly, are very patronizing and shows that the BOE is more concerned with the criticism of planning versus actually sharing the plan that directly has an impact on our children. More important than knowing you have a plan is actually seeing the plan. We know that there is a plan. We know we are moving forward, but there is no comfort in patronizing words or ignored requests. Much of the community would like to see the plan for the next school year. It is beneficial to see the plan thoroughly documented and publicly posted. Currently, you have the BTSD COVID dashboard publicly posted for all those numbers, which is great, but we also need the same public access to the details of the next school year's plan. While the point may have passed to post publicly the current year's plan, I strongly request and urge you to post for public viewing a comprehensive COVID plan for this next school year. Please comment on the possibility of this happening. Next public comment is from Barbara Geary, 66 Dryden Road. In light of the social and emotional struggles all children have faced this year due to COVID and homeschooling, what is the district's plan for our counseling department? Will additional school counselors be hired for each building? Adding more staff will be essential to address the growing needs of our students. As a Cedar Hill family, we have been lucky to have and have had Mrs. Molly Mooney for CHS for the past 5 years. Her guidance, insights, and dedication have been valuable. I have always thought that one counselor for student body of 400 to 500 at CHS was too much for one individual. I hope we will be adding additional staffing in the counseling department for all buildings as we continue to deal with the pandemic. Thank you. There is an additional comment from the same person that submitted that first comment. So Mr. Crew, I'm not sure how much time we have on that, but it's from Mark Matarazzo again. I'll read this one too. This is the only other comment we have. Can someone comment on why snow days have turned into virtual days for in-person students? Both my children are in person, and that is the best learning environment for them. They thrive in an environment with physical peers and teacher. Through the other classmates, they see the same success and struggles that they are going through, but are encouraged by the fact they are not alone in their needs. When in person, the teacher is also physically right there and can visually see what each student needs for that day and pay better attention to them. For students who are accustomed to in person, that is not something that translates to a virtual environment, where your peers and teachers are little rectangles on the screen and where student focus is diminished. Going virtual was an emergency solution to an emergency situation. For those who, you know what, I just realized this comment somehow got bundled from February 22nd. I'm going to stop reading it. I apologize. It was grouped into that same original email. My apologies. That's all the public comment we have.
Thank you, Mr. Syed.
knew that's-
Mr. Markarian, I don't know. Sorry. Is that everything?
That is.
It is.
Okay. I don't know if you are planning to respond to anything, but I apologize. I cannot help myself. I cannot understand. I don't know the particulars, but if we have students wrestling and playing basketball without masks, I'm hoping we can find a way to help the forensics team meet this request. And as I said, I can't presume to know the particulars, but I'm confident that with all the hardworking people that we have, we can do something to support this request. I think it's fairly reasonable. And I just, in light of what we have going on with athletics, it just seems like confounding to me. Ms. Hira, I see your hand.
I just want to piggyback off what you said and basically say that if there's anything that we can do to get them back in person on March 20th for their statewide competition, then I would like to support that and encourage it.
I know I jumped ahead of you, Mr. Markarian, so if you'd like to respond to any comments.
Mrs. Gray, can I answer Mrs. Beckman's question from before?
Oh,
I forgot,
sure.
but I have had some text messages telling me that the person older students can contact is Mrs. Kristen Thorpe at the high school. And I should have known that.
Thank you, Ms. Fox.
So let's see here. As far as, there was a question about counseling staff. We will be talking about staffing when we get into our budget presentations in March and May. At this time, I don't think we have any requests for new counseling staff planned for in the budget. We're not going to go back to the snow day comment. The question about public viewing of a plan for next school year. We've talked about this quite a bit in terms of what we want next school year to be. The plan is to open up next school year full-time in person for everyone. That's the plan. The only thing that would stop us from doing that is if we get some type of executive order that says that we have to do something different. As far as forensics goes, I'll be happy to meet with Dr. Lazovic and take a look at that. Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Markarian. So our next item is board forum. Board members. Ms. Beckman.
I just want to agree with you regarding forensics. That has got to happen at school. That should be simple. I say that without knowing all the background of it, but that should happen just like sports and other things do.
Ms. Schaefer, I saw your hand as well.
I am fully supportive of the forensics team's request. I also think we should consider all the other activities that are meeting virtually, and it's very difficult for a lot of these clubs to not meet in person. And it's not even just the camaraderie, it's sometimes functions. So, you know, I would like to explore that. Can we make that happen in the afternoon hours, things like that in socially distanced ways?
Anyone else?
I want to say that I'm also you know, I think the forensics team, they're so impressive. I mean, you know, they work super duper hard. They put hours and hours and hours of time. So they really do deserve to do their best and have that camaraderie. And I love what the girls said, that they were really thinking about the younger kids, like giving them their experience. And I love that because that just shows how much they care about each other. So, you know, we should help them out.
Anyone else? I just want to kind of piggyback on the last two comments and add that I agree that my understanding is that there is a process in place for clubs to present a plan for how they would, or clubs or activities to return to an in-person experience. If there are ways that we can help to support that, I guess maybe that's what need to be explored at this point. But I certainly do support that. Right, I don't know if anyone else has anything. If not, then we are up to adjournment. Can I have a motion to adjourn in a second? Mr. Salmon and Ms. Schaefer? All in favor? That's everybody, Mr. McLaughlin.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Have a great
everybody.
night. Good night.
Have a great
Thank
night.
you. Good night.